hates you.
Hello and welcome to Everyone Hates You, a podcast with me, Michelle Shaughnessy, where we talk about failures and rejections. Today in the studio, I have a very special guest, comedian Ed Byrne. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Not at all. You've been pestering me about it for long enough. I have to give in.
Okay.
I can't reject a podcast about rejection. I just feel like that would really be compounding a problem that already exists.
Oh, meta. I love it. When you say pestering, I didn't really pester. I asked once and you were like, yes, absolutely. I did pester you to get the dates.
Yes.
Pestered you to get the dates in. But I don't think, it's not like I harassed you.
No, but we have, viewers should know we have been slightly living in each other's pockets for a few weeks now because you were opening for me on tour.
Yes, for quite a while.
So, yeah.
And now it's done for the next little bit.
It would have been a very awkward tour had I gone, no, I don't want to do your podcast.
Yeah, it would have been a little awkward.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being here. So have you listened to any of the podcasts?
Yes.
Have you really? Or are you just saying that to be nice?
Jason's one.
Okay. So we talk about failures and rejections.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you have a lot of success, but we don't give a fuck about that on this podcast. I mean, you can plug whatever you need to, but we're going to start with failures and rejections. Did you come prepared?
Well, I mean, I have a fair back catalogue of them. You know, I'm sure there's some different ones we can drill down into in greater detail.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Just that, you just want me to just straight away.
Yeah.
It isn't like do you have a particular failure-wise? I think, admittedly, I have told the story before, but I did my second ever time doing stand-up on television. I did not have a good time. I was in Australia. I was doing a place called The Last Laugh in Melbourne, and I had already done a slot on a TV show called Hey Hey It's Saturday. That was my first ever time doing stand-up on TV, and that went absolutely great.
How old were you at this time?
This would have been 1996, so I was actually 23.
So you'd only been doing it for a couple
24.
years.
Oh yeah.
So you were like brand new.
This was back in the day
When you didn't
Michelle.
need to be really good to get on TV.
This is back when you could. It was sort of pre-internet days, and you could just come from another country to a country that's far enough away, where you can pretend you're more successful back home than you actually.
That would have been ideal for me moving
Yeah.
here, frankly.
Yeah. You could have done that. You could have easily have done that instead of 95. Just come from Canada, but you would have been.
I was a child.
13?
I was not.
I'm trying to be nice.
I was not 13.
Okay.
In and around.
Right.
In and around, but not quite yet 13.
So you could, and then there was a kind of an attitude, and Australian comedians will tell you, particularly at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, there is a sort of a tendency to be more interested in the international acts, and there's a sort of an attitude of, well, he's come all this way. He can't have come all
We
this way
got to
just
give
to
him
die.
something.
But it's assumed he's of some standard.
Right, okay.
That he's been flown here at somebody else's expense. He must be all right. So yeah, I did 5 minutes on I think Hey Hey It's Saturday, and that was grand. And then I got asked to do a show called Midday with Kerry Ann. Mm-hmm. I was supposed to do 4 minute slot, and it was obviously an afternoon show. Audience much older.
Was there other comics on the show, or were you just the comedian guest
I was
that
the
day?
comedian that day.
Yeah.
And I even remember. I can't remember. I don't know which actress it was because I wasn't. But one of the main actors from Muriel's Wedding was there. So either Toni Collette or what's her who then went on to be in 6 Feet Under.
I forget her name. This is not going to reflect well on us.
I feel like I gotta look that up anyway.
So one of them was there.
One of them was there, and the producer, caster, whatever, said, "Oh yeah, they're going to be going to Dublin soon. They want to they were looking forward to talking to you." When I said there was an Irish comedian, I don't know if they wanted some advice. I went, "Oh great, love to talk to them." And then I went on, I stood, and I asked this floor manager, and I said, "When I've done 4 minutes, can you give me a wind up?" And they said, "Yeah." And then I started my set, and I got to the end of my set as far as I was concerned, and nobody moved.
Oh no!
And I had done, and the jokes had worked fine, but then I just thought, oh, I must have I sped up because I'm nervous, and I've not done enough time, and so I just kept going. And I went on with a routine that I got 75% of the way through before I realized the punchline was too rude to do in an afternoon TV show. So I just had to pull out of it.
You didn't just do it anyway? You just did a setup, no punchline?
Show. Yeah, basically.
That's the worst feeling.
Yeah. And then I just floundered. And then I reached so hard for a joke. I was working at the time with Nick Wilty. He was on the bill. And it was Melbourne Comedy Festival. And I did one of his jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Like his just sort of bit of audience banter about, the phrase no worries. Like I just panicked and took one of his, Yeah, like did it. And still didn't get a laugh because I delivered it with such lack of any kind of, 'cause as I'm doing, I'm going, oh, that's not mine,
Did you tell him this after the fact?
Yeah, I phoned him
as
soon as I came off the show because I felt terrible. But anyway, and then after another while, I just go, I don't know how long I've done. And then the woman gives me the wind up. And it turns out I had done 8 minutes.
Oh, no.
I did my 4 minutes.
Was it live?
It was live. Yeah. I did 4 minutes. That went fine. And then 4 minutes of death. And just, I went off. And, the booker was like, yeah. And then I went, so does that actress still want to know about, oh, she left.
That's hilarious.
And it was like they didn't want to go. No, that they did not want the stench of death on them. So they yeah.
That's really funny.
Mm.
So that was your first failure that you'd say?
I'd say that was no, because obviously we've all had open mic.
Yeah, but that was the first notable failure.
I'd say that was that was the most public humiliation I've ever
had.
Okay. Yeah. And I have checked, and there is no record of it. So that
there you go. It's it never existed.
Yeah, and I have been back on that show since, and they forgot it was me, I think.
Oh, that's great. You wonder if they're like, oh, we had this Irish guy one year.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, it was a good few years later that I went back on. Yeah. So yeah, but that was my first time in Sydney. Yeah. It was
Do you still feel like you've been 30 years in it?
Yeah.
Do you still feel like you have failures and rejections now that bother you? Or do you just kind of roll with the punches at this point when people aren't interested in you?
Yeah, I think the last time I felt really insecure or dodgy about my career was I was doing the tour I did previous to this one. It started off in Edinburgh in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was good. It was a really good show. It was and it was fun to do. And it was, it was just upbeat. It was talking about what about me was I hoping to pass on to my kids. And it was one of the funniest ones I'd done I still think it's one of the funniest shows I've ever done. And I remember touring it and it going great. And I remember sort of being aware of shows that I was not on and podcasts I was not being asked to do. And I remember because in the early doors of that tour, I was going to my publicist, yeah, can you get us on this one?
Mm-hmm.
Can you get us on that one? And them just coming back on, no, they don't want you, And they go, all right. But I remember thinking, it doesn't matter because this show's funny and I'm out there and I'm doing it and it's booked for a year and it's all, in fact, it was supposed to be sort of like an 18-month thing and it's it doesn't matter what I'm on or what TV shows I'm not doing because I'm doing this and this is what I do. And then March 2020, it all got shut down because of COVID and everything was taken out. And then suddenly, the shit you're not doing is all there is to do.
Yeah.
And that's when I think that's the last time I remember feeling really kind of going, oh shit, I got nothing.
Why do you think you had a hard time getting on those podcasts and things like that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not, I have no idea. I have no idea because it's a lot of the time it's people who I met.
Yeah, see, that would drive me crazy. I would have to figure it out. That would drive me insane if I was just not getting on things that people I knew were doing. It would drive me to the point of insanity trying to figure out what I did wrong and why everyone hates me. Hence the podcast. Yeah.
No, it's certainly an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I am aware that I am in what would best be referred to as the most competitive demographic in the industry.
Okay.
You know, in that when you know, I'm if somebody is really striving to make their podcast as diverse as possible, I'm not going to be very high on their list.
That's fair.
Used to be in the 90s. In the 90s, being Irish was considered diversity.
Well,
you know?
like being a woman used to be considered being diverse
Yeah.
too, and not anymore.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm sure that obviously will play its part, and that you know, you literally can go. Ed Byrne wants to do your podcast, and one thing we're not short of is middle-aged straight white guys. Who else you got? You know, and I'm aware that is that plays its part, but I'm more worried that it's more things like, oh no, I worked with that guy. He's hard work.
Do you think you're difficult?
I don't think I am, but I think my thing is I demand very little. That then when I don't get what little I ask for, I get quite annoyed by it.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Somebody that's been on the road with you, I can attest to that. You don't get mad about a lot of things, but when certain little things like sound don't go your way, you make it known.
Like, all I ask
but
for-
you don't ask for a lot. I've worked with people that ask for a lot. They have extensive riders. They want specific things. And when they don't get it, they rage out. You're not difficult in that sense.
No. We don't.
But I think
we don't
sometimes-
ask for anything from the theater.
No, but I
anyway.
do think sometimes because you don't ask for a lot, people don't expect you to get mad at the little things. So when you do, it's kind of like, whoa. And maybe it's taken a bit more personally than it should be because you're not somebody that kind of, you know, has this very extensive list of demands.
Well, you know, I remember at the Edinburgh Fringe one year, I was on after you know, a stuff that had loads of props and a big set and stuff like that, and I literally asked for a table. A table I supplied that I just asked that they place on the stage for me to put my beer on. And 3 out of the first 5 nights, I walked out and the table wasn't there. You know, and
That would annoy me.
And the first time I was like, yeah, you forgot the table. And then the second, and the third time I was like, the fucking table. All I asked for is a fucking table. Can I just have a fucking table? You know, because that's all I asked for. And they just go. I think sometimes when you don't have loads of demands, your one demand that you do have is just forgotten. You know.
Yeah, I get that. So you did the festival. You've done. How
Yeah.
many times have you done it? The Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh, God, I have it written down at home. And people ask me, and I keep forgetting.
Did you say 20?
One person shows. I think it must be about that. Maybe not quite so many. No, because I think I've sort of done it every other year since I started. So yeah, I think it's about 15 one-man shows now.
Have you had any that you look back on that were nightmares?
Yeah.
That you were like, I wish that year didn't happen?
Yeah, I had a really bad year one year, 2004.
Okay.
So I remember, and actually I didn't have a great year 2000 either. 2000 it was decided I would play the Playhouse, which is the 3,000 seater, the big massive one.
How famous were you in 2000?
Well, I was
famous
known
enough
in
to pull it
Edinburgh.
off?
I was known I could have done one night,
Okay.
but for some reason.
Do you do the whole run in the Playhouse?
No, I didn't do the whole run, but they put me in there for 5 nights,
Okay.
which is too many.
Okay.
And I think they just got a deal on it. I think nobody wanted to do it, and it wasn't being used.
Like, we'll put
And,
this
yeah,
guy in there.
And I think my manager thought it was going to be it's such a big thing that the scale of the event would sell itself, sort of thing, you know. And I'd be honest with you, I don't think the show was great anyway. But I think we had like 2,700 in on the Friday, on the Saturday.
Holds like what, 3,000?
Close 3,000.
Okay.
You know, so
How were the other nights?
Yeah, I had like 300-400 some nights.
That must be awful to look out and see
Yeah.
all those empty seats.
And what was really annoying was like, how many we got in? How many I got in? And they'd say, oh, yeah, it's good. No, it's good. We got like 1,000. Okay. And
So
I'd
they
walk
lie.
out and then not going, why would you think
That you wouldn't
that my moment of walking on stage and seeing there was only half what you told me was going to be? Why would you think that is the time for me to find out how few people are there?
That's a really good point,
That
actually.
is like, yeah. So 2000 wasn't a great year. And then I didn't do a show there and I was talking about the whole sort of failure, rejection, that 2001 was a real slide. It was a real slowdown. I remember I was working, I had a pretty cushy number. I was a voiceover guy for Carphone Warehouse, mobile cell phone retailer. and I was their radio guy. I just did loads of ads for them, and I didn't have to do anything else. That was enough to live on. And I kind of took my foot off the gas, I have to admit.
In terms of writing a good show.
Jokes
Okay.
and stuff like that, yeah. So, and I freely admit that was, and it was also just around the time that I had lost my sort of new car smell as a comedian and was no longer considered interesting or exciting. I had done 2 pretty bad sitcoms, one for UK TV and one for Irish television.
Were they your own sitcoms or were you just on them?
I was just in them.
Okay, that's not that bad.
No, it's not like I wrote them.
Yeah.
But it was enough to get referred to by one journalist as Ed Crap Sitcom Byrne. I think it was in Time Out.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a frontal wedgie, so I'm just going to fix that.
Yeah,
That's fine.
fix that.
We'll leave it in. It's part of the failure and rejection.
So anyway, I did a play at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2003, myself and Michael Smiley. And
did you find that less pressure than doing your own stand-up show?
Certainly less pressure, but it wasn't like that well received. It got I think it got 1 3-star review. You know, it didn't. And again, I didn't write it, didn't have any. But I remember being there that year and realizing how much I missed doing the Fringe, having done it every year from '95 to 2000. I went, oh, that's really. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do another show next year. And I did a show called Me Again, and it was kind of a breakup show. I had just come out of a relationship then that I broke up with. Actually broke with her at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2003.
You broke up with her at the Fringe?
Yeah.
Did she break up with you, or did you break up with her?
She. Well, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
We just kept arguing. All we did was argue, and I remember saying to the guy who I was in the play with, when he said, "So what's your girlfriend like?" And I described the relationship, and his response was, "Well, why are you still going out with her?" Like, if this is how you're describing the relationship you're in, why? I know it's no. Anyway, subsequently met somebody else at the Edinburgh Fringe that year who would later become my wife. So it's all it's all good.
So it all worked out.
Yeah. Anyway, so being at the Fringe 2003, then 2004, wrote a show, and it was kind of, I had a lot of anger about that past relationship, and it went into this show. In a way that I thought was, cathartic and that, but just, I think, came across as just being a bit too misogynistic. So I was marked down for that.
Okay.
But also, it felt like
Did reviewers pick up on that?
A couple did, yeah.
Okay.
But it was weird to me in a way, because I had always kind of done jokes that maybe previously would be considered a bit ladsy, where I genuinely talk about, self-deprecating, but talking about the way men behave and the way women behave. In this one, I was literally talking about the way one specific right. woman, and so to me, I thought, I'm not saying this is women. This is my relationship that I had.
The thing is, too, because you had just broken up the year before, she was probably like looking for those reviews to see how your show was doing that year, and she probably loved that.
Yeah, I bet she did. Yeah, I bet she enjoyed the terrible reviews I was getting. And I think there was also I think they weren't all terrible reviews, but it was certainly the worst reviewed year I've ever had at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Really?
Yeah, that year.
Did you get a 1-star?
No, but I think I got a 2-star from somebody. Anyway, what was interesting was that the worst reviews, the worst 3 or 4 reviews, I remember Fest gave me a really bad review, but all of the worst reviews all mentioned the Carphone Warehouse in the review. In
what context?
Just the fact that that's what I'd been doing,
That's kind of like a diss.
Well, it totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I felt like when I was reading those reviews that it was like, you were going to just hate me anyway. You have a problem with you. Because more so than in the States, over here, and I think it's actually less so now, but there was always this thing that comedians shouldn't do ads, and if a comedian does an ad, they've sold out. And
that's ridiculous.
No, it was very, very
That's
prevalent.
ridiculous.
The spirit of Bill Hicks still lived on in the early noughties, and that whole idea that if you do an ad, you're rejected, or you're out of the artistic community, and that's the ultimate sellout thing to do. And I felt that there was a certain amount of Knives Out for that, for the
Okay.
the Carphone Warehouse guy, coming back to stand up or whatever. But as I say, it wasn't a great show, so
Have you
take it
had
on
what
the
you
chin.
thought were great shows and have been shocked by bad reviews from them?
Yeah. The show I did then the following year, I did a show called Standing Up and Falling Down. Was it the following year or 2 years later? One or the other. And it was a good show. I'm not saying that. It was, and I remember I got a 2-star review from The Independent for it when I previewed it at the Battersea Arts Centre, and I was really surprised by that. I thought that was really unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Because it went on to be a good show. That did well at the Edinburgh Fringe and stuff, and then I toured it and always quite liked it. So yeah, I thought that was a bit.
How are you with
unfair.
bad reviews now? Have you developed a bit of a thick skin, or do they still? Do you actively look?
I do, yeah. And I remember that year of the year in 2004 where I had said I want to know about the bad reviews. I do want to know. I may not read them, but I want to know that they exist. So please.
See, now you can't escape it
Yeah.
because people tag you or you get Google alerts every day.
Well, yeah.
And so you can't just hide from your bad reviews anymore. It's
No,
annoying.
but I was curious, and I did want to know, and then I remember still having said that because I said what I didn't want to have happen was to hear about it secondhand from somebody in a bar.
That's the worst.
Yeah,
That would be the
and
worst.
yet that was still happening.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry to hear. Sorry, I think Fest are really unfair. What? But it's funny. I remember when I was there in '99, because '98 was one of my best ever reviewed years. When I got nominated for the Perrier and stuff like that, and I got 5 stars in the Scots. It's the only time I ever got 5 stars in the Scotsman. I didn't even get it for 5 stars in the Scotsman, 5 stars in the list. So '98 was amazing, and then '99 was grand. Perfectly serviceable year. But I remember I met a guy from the Scotsman at a party who said, "I just saw your review that's going out in tomorrow's Scotsman, and it's a 5-star review." Oh, yes. And then I ran into somebody and go, "Oh, your review." Next day, "Oh, your review's in the Scotsman." I went, I haven't seen it yet. She goes, "Yeah, it's pretty good." That's what I hear. It's 5 stars. She goes, "No, it's 4. It's like, oh, and I look like such a dick because the
You're upset, yeah.
editor of the Scotsman had told me I had a 5-star review in the Scotsman the next day.
Yeah.
And then somebody, it was Lisa White, who's a manager.
Yep.
And I ran into her. And she goes, "Oh, you got a good review." And I just look like such a dick. Go, "Yeah, I hear it's 5 stars. No, it's 4. And then look, what? Like a 4-star review is a perfectly,
Yeah.
But because somebody had told me it was a 5-star, I look like such an arsehole being disappointed with a 4-star review.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, who the fuck do you think you are?
That would frustrate me too, though, because I had that happen a couple years ago. I was told that I was getting a specific number of stars in a specific publication that shall remain nameless, and it was not that. And it was probably my worst review. Like, it was 3 stars, which isn't bad, but that's not for a comic.
There's nothing you
We
can
don't
do.
want it. You can't do it. You can't put it on a poster. Like, I pulled a quote from it, but that review pissed me off because they said that I was unself-aware, and I'm a lot of things. And, I think I'm too self-aware, to be honest. But that really stuck with me, and I'm really angry about that specific line.
Do you want to talk about your bad review?
I do want to talk about the bad review that I got in Stockport. So let's set the scenario. So we did Stockport a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
I forgot my
Stockport
show
Plaza.
clothes. I normally dress very nice on stage. I like skirts. I like dresses. I forgot my show clothes. And
Well, I remember coming into the green room, and you went, I don't believe it. I brought 2 tops.
I brought 2 tops, no bottoms.
Yeah.
So I only had my Lululemon tights,
Mm-hmm.
leggings. I think they're called leggings here. My Lululemon
Leggings,
leggings
you call them.
to wear, and my jumpers, which was, a Balmain jumper. So it's nice. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed." And you and the tour manager, Paul, were like, "Nobody will notice what you're wearing. It doesn't matter. And it's not like you're dressed like a slob." And I was like, "Should I acknowledge it?" And you specifically said, "Don't acknowledge it because you're still dressed better than 90% of Stockport. And that will make you look bad if you're saying that on stage." Didn't acknowledge it. So
Well, I still stand by the fact that you shouldn't have acknowledged it because you weren't dressed badly enough that it would be weird to go on and say whilst wearing leggings and a hooded sweater, "Oh, I'm dressed like a slob."
Right.
Because I genuinely think people would be offended. There would be people in the audience who will have shown up dressed exactly like you. And the point I made was that often you'll go to a comedy show and the comedian will be dressed like that. So I just felt like a remark about how badly dressed you were would have fallen flat.
Right, you'd think. So I'll tell you how I found this review. I was looking up your name on Twitter to find bad things people say about you to bring it up on the podcast.
Right.
And I couldn't find any because I got so distracted. So somebody did notice, and they decided to review me and critique my outfit on their shitty blog. So let's see what the 9 review had to say. Carrie Ali, if you're listening to this, just know I forgot my show clothes, but you weren't fair on a few things. You said that I was wearing sweatpants and a turtleneck. I was not wearing sweatpants. Had I only brought sweatpants, I would have went to the store because I even said, we passed the Next, and I said, should I go buy something? And you said, you're being ridiculous. Those were your words. You're being ridiculous. Was I being ridiculous? According to Carrie, I was not, and I should have bought an outfit. So, not sweatpants. This is what Carrie had to say. Where are we here? First of all, she said there was a lack of engagement to my questions and my repetitive responses. I literally don't know what you're talking about because I only chatted to one couple in the audience and they were very into it and had a good time. And I don't know what you mean by repetitive responses unless you mean what we call, I don't know, a fucking callback. That's a thing in comedy. And people laughed at it. I got a lot of followers from that Stockport gig.
No.
And we also found out that the sound didn't work in the upper circle, so half the people couldn't even hear me. Perhaps you were one of them, or maybe you could hear me. You were just so distracted by my fucking outfit, Carrie. She said, for somebody somewhat disappointing, Michelle spoke about her beauty enhancements as part of her act, but took to wearing a turtleneck and sweatpants. I was not wearing sweatpants. And that jumper... not a turtleneck, a jumper, that's a $1,600 jumper. And I know I shouldn't brag about that. I shouldn't whatever. I'm not rich. But I do have some nice things that I worked hard for. Well, my husband worked hard for, and I bought them. So, S my D, Carrie.
To be fair, it does not look like a $1,600 jumper.
It says Balmain on it. Anyone who knows, knows. It's not my fault that you aren't in the know when it comes to fashion houses.
Can I just say that reviewer as well also spelled my name
They did
wrong.
spell your name
About
wrong.
8 times, I think, referred to me as
Brian.
Ed Byrne.
And
yeah.
you have a thing about being referred to as Ed Byrne because you say that nobody is named Brian.
It's not a name.
Which we've discussed before.
Because you then went and looked up the name Brian and went, look, it is a name.
It was the look of someone very casual when compared to the suited, semi-formal. I wouldn't have given you semi-formal.
I'm wearing a suit jacket. I'm wearing jeans and trainers and a suit jacket.
Yeah, that's not semi-formal.
Oh, I wouldn't have called it
That's like casual
sports
wear.
casual.
Thank you. That's exactly what it was. So, yeah, I got a problem with you. And I posted about it on Instagram. I was going to reply to the review, something very funny, but I've since learned that that's probably not the best thing to do when it comes to this kind of stuff. And they tagged everyone else. They tagged their review thing, 9 review. They tagged Ed. They tagged the Stockport Plaza. They did not tag me. That's cowardly. At least tag me if you say this shit about me.
I think that I would say the opposite. I think when you write a negative review about somebody,
No,
then tag
stand
them
by
in
it.
just seems
Stand by it.
You can stand by your words, but I think it's mean to let the person who you're slagging off know about it.
Also, Ed makes a joke at the top of the show. Can I say your joke about the 5-star review in The Guardian?
Yeah.
Because you talk about your success at the Fringe last year, and you make a joke saying, I got 4 stars in The Guardian. It's the most I've ever gotten in The Guardian. You say, but you don't want a 5-star review in The Guardian. If you get a 5-star review from The Guardian in a comedy show, it means there was not a single joke in it. It was a guy punching himself in a dick for an hour. So then he brings me on. He makes fun of me on stage, which is it's funny the way you do it. I know it sounds bad. Especially given that we've just talked about your history with misogyny, but it's not that at all. He makes a joke where he says, "Oh, her. By the way, she last year at Edinburgh Fringe Festival, she got a 5-star review in The Guardian."
These little digs that sort of you'll know her. Like so in Stockport, and go, you'll know her from her blog. 10 Reasons Stockport is a shit.
Maybe they took that seriously, and they were like, "You're gonna slam on our town? Nice sweatpants, bitch."
And then said, "No, honestly, she's really good. Her show at the Edinburgh Fringe got a 5-star review."
Which everyone knows is a joke because people laugh.
A joke.
This person didn't get it was a joke and said, considering they were hyped at the beginning of the show as an Edinburgh discovery, I was not fucking hyped as an Edinburgh discovery because my Edinburgh run probably went worse than that fucking show that you saw in Stockport, Carrie. So it was really hard for me not to reply to that review. But what's the point of that? And that just would have brought more viewers to the review because I have a lot more followers than the 9 review on Twitter. So that just would have brought more eyes to it. And so
here we are.
I think it's hilarious. I love this kind of stuff. It's like, I think it's funny.
I know exactly where you're coming from. It's annoying when you get a bad review and then there's inaccuracies in that review.
I was not wearing sweatpants.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I also wore heels.
I remember I had a routine. It was a few years ago. I think it was in a show called Outside Looking In. I think that was the one. Anyway, and I remember the bit I was doing, and I remember choosing my words very, very carefully because it was a sort of a sensitive thing. And again, it was very self-deprecating, which was to do with one of the things that I'm disappointed in myself for as I've gotten older, is that I care what attractive young women think of me. That was the term I used. I care what attractive young women think of me. And it was something that when I was younger, I didn't understand as a trope that you'd see in sitcoms and stuff like that. Middle-aged married men, attractive girl walks by and they suck in their gut, that kind of carry on, that sort of stuff. I never understood it. And now as an older man, I just just that thing of, if you're in the gym and there's a hot woman on the treadmill next to yours, I'll run that bit faster. Like that's gonna crack her open like a Kinder Surprise.
I do get that. I get that.
Just and it's the whole point is how disappointed I am.
I'll say,
care, right?
As a straight woman, I care what attractive young women think about my appearance.
Yeah.
They're the most judgmental group that there is.
Yeah.
And I always, when I'm around the young youth women, I'm always like, oh my God, what do they think of my outfit? Like, are they like, look at that old lady? And
But that's what it was about. And that's the way I said it. And I got a review saying it. But I have to say, as a young woman, I didn't appreciate his routine about fancying young girls.
That's okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what I said.
Did you reply to it?
No, what's the fucking point? But it's just, you're just gonna go, that's not what I said. And I was very,
I get that.
I know I write quite specifically when I'm, once I've finessed it and decided how it's gonna be, a lot of my stuff is kind of set in stone once I get the wording exactly right. And I remember being aware that, I am slagging myself off for being a creep or whatever, but I did not say anything about fancying. In fact, I think she actually used on fancying young girls, which I simply do not do, let alone anything else. But I specifically used the phrase attractive young women, and caring what they think about me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Saying that and young girls are two very different things. So if they use the words young girls, that makes you sound like a
Because when I'm
big
talking
creeper.
about attractive younger women, I'm talking about women like in their 30s, So yeah, I felt that was a misrepresentation. So that always annoyed me if you do get like a poor review and you want to go, but that's not even what I said. Like I remember another one where a guy said, he cited a particular joke as being one of his favorites and then complained that the show was disjointed because it leapt from this subject to that subject. And I was like, wow, because it didn't. I remember it went from this to this to this to that. But the joke that you wrote down that you particularly liked, that was the subject he thinks I then jumped from to something else and go, you've obviously written down the fucking joke that you liked. You've looked back up. You've lost the thread. And suddenly going, how did we get here? Because you weren't fucking paying attention because you were writing down the joke. It's like, it was saying, it had jumped from talking about interviews to talking about sports. But the whole thing was I did a whole thing about sports interviews in the middle.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
See, the reviews that critique my comedy, I couldn't much care about, to be honest, because comedy is very subjective. And it's weird to me that people even review comedy shows. I get it. But it's just something that never bothered me that much. Like when somebody's like, oh, I didn't find that funny or this didn't land. Okay, cool. Like I don't care. But when it comes to like stuff like that, like my appearance or inaccuracies, that's where I really hold on to those. Like, and I literally talk about this on every episode, so I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to again. When Jay Richardson, the Scotsman, said this middle-aged comedian, that has stuck with me for so long, and I think about it every day. And I'm sure Jay's a nice guy. I do find his reviews rather fair. So I'm not critiquing him as a reviewer, but I know I'm middle-aged. I just didn't know other people realized I was middle-aged. So that was a big eye-opener to me that I was not fooling anyone when it came to my age. But that was something that really stuck with me. And he did say a lot of very nice things. I don't remember them because I'm too sidetracked by being called middle-aged for the first time in my life. Yeah. So things like that, like this whole sweatpants thing, those really affect me. And I'll carry it for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is, on the whole review thing, there's certain reviewers I genuinely care what they think because I think they know what they're talking about. And if they give me a bad review...
Is he one of them that you care what they think?
Yeah, Richard, yeah. Well, I think he's someone who knows what he's talking about.
I do too. That's why that was the year that and I'm talking about it in my new show because that was when I really needed to accept my age. Yeah. And accept that although what is middle-aged? What is middle-aged? That's what I'm confused about, because guys like you call yourself middle-aged. You're not living to be 102, let's be honest. So what is middle-aged? That's where I'm confused. Because all the guys I know in their 50s are like, I'm middle-aged. But then to call somebody in their 30s middle-aged, that, like, I what is middle-aged to you?
Well, yeah, that is a tricky one. I mean, I would have said sort of, it's anything. The question is, what is old? That is the question.
Old is relative. It depends on who's calling you old.
Well,
because I'm sure people in their 20s think I'm old.
There you go. I guess. I don't know. I guess I'm 51. I'll be 52 in April. I guess I'm old then. In which case, I'm not even middle-aged anymore. But I will refer to myself as middle-aged because I think that's nicer.
I know. It's hard when you realize
Barry
that,
Cryer
right?
used to do a joke about that. Yeah, he used to say, well, I'm middle-aged if I'm going to live to be 180.
Yeah. It's one of those things, but that just stuck with me. And, you know, I feel bad for just telling that Carrie lady to fuck off. I'm sure you're a nice person. But, you know,
but I get annoyed at reviews of people I like. This is not just my reviews or anything like that. I get if I read another review that I feel inaccurate, I want to write in about it.
Can I also just say you saw that review and you didn't show it to me?
That's very true.
And I get that because you didn't know how I'd react at the time.
If the only thing in the review that had been negative had been about your clothes,
right? Not my repetitive.
I absolutely would have showed it to you.
Okay.
And I would have done, and gone, look how wrong I was. I can't believe one time you don't dress up nice. That's the one thing that they picked
When I complained to you about this review, did I say anything else about anything that they said, or did I just harp on the clothes?
It was the clothes.
Because I don't give a fuck about anything else.
That was what was funny
I don't
about
care
it.
what else they thought, because like I said, comedy is subjective, and if I'm not your cup of tea, I'm not your cup of tea. I don't expect to be everybody's. But the clothes thing, that's going to sit with me for a while.
Yeah.
And it's going to go in my new show as well, because I think it's hilarious.
Well, you should let it fuel you. But it's what's funny is when people take a bad review and turn it into a good review. Like a lot of the time, like it's a classic trope in Edinburgh Fringe amongst publicists, that idea of just pulling out one word.
I did that.
Yeah.
Mind you, I didn't get anything. Nothing was less than a 3. And the publicist had told me, she was like, I don't understand why you guys don't like 3-star reviews. From a publicist's perspective, that's a good review. And I was like, but you can't. Nobody wants to go see a 3-star show. Like, it's not good.
It's not a good review.
Yeah. But it's weird because it's one of those things where you get a lot of 3-star reviews that read like a 5, and that confuses me.
Yeah, that's
where you're like, you didn't say one bad thing. You said winning debut and then 3-star. Like, that confuses me. I don't really understand from the point of view of a reviewer how they come up with these stars sometimes. Because then you'll read a 5-star review and there are some critiques in it sometimes.
I think if the comedy is performed competently and the audience laughed, then you should get at least 3 stars there anyway.
That's fair.
Then, because then they have done their job to at least a minimum standard.
Yeah.
I think that deserves 3 stars. I think you can only give something 2 or 1 if the audience didn't laugh.
Fair. Okay.
If the audience didn't laugh, 1 star. If the audience laughed a couple of times, 2 stars. But if the audience were laughing, you've got to have at least 3 stars. The idea of somebody coming out of a show going, well, the audience seemed to like it, but it wasn't for me. 2 stars. No, you do not understand the concept of objective analysis.
Well, it's even like when other comics shit on some comics and say they're awful, but they kill every time. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what we think. It's the audience that kind of determines.
You've got to at least respect that skill. You cannot enjoy
100%. 100%. So I do agree with you on that. In terms of like failures.
But I've always respected, people who managed to take, like there was a classic year where one comedian got a 1-star review from the Scotsman, but he had 5 posters all next to each other outside the assembly room, so he just put 1 star on each poster.
And it looked like 5 stars. That's really funny.
So he's still being honest.
Yeah.
And there was another guy, past now, Jason Wood, who again got a 1-star review. I think it was from the Scotsman, and just put a star.
Yeah, I've heard that story.
Poster.
Everyone kind of talks about that. So do you like to know when reviewers are into your shows, or do you?
Yeah.
See, I don't. And there was a point last year where I was like, okay, tell me. And the team that I was working with was like, absolutely not. You're not the kind of person that can handle knowing that. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not.
Yeah, it's a tricky. I remember we read reading a review once with it was Claire's assistant Chris. I'm not going to say who it was for, but there was a phrase in the review that said there was an electric fan droning in the corner, and it was more interesting than the show. And we were trying to decide what you would pull out of this review, and he said, "Well, I just put on the poster
electric."
Yeah,
exactly, exactly, right. But it always makes me like, and I know we're not punters, so we have a different brain. But when I see somebody just pull a quote and not put a number of stars, it makes me be like, oh, I have to go find that review to see like what. Do you know what I mean? Because we know that as comedians, that's kind of like a little PR.
Yeah. Well, I remember Brendan Burns used to even talk about it. That's why I don't mind saying the name. He got a really, really bad review from a guy. I think Tom Lappin was the guy's name. That said, Brendan Burns has got pretty much everything it takes to be a star. Charismatic, handsome, great timing, great presence. Oh, except he's not funny. And he just took the quote and just cut off the end.
That's really funny. That's really funny, actually. Good for him. Yeah. Do you find, okay, in terms of like failures and rejections, is there anything that still sits with you other than reviews and festival shows? Is there anything that still sits with you that you didn't get, that you don't understand why, or that you're still bitter about? Because you don't seem like a very bitter human being. I've worked with a lot of men of a certain age, your category. And you don't seem nearly as bitter as most of them. I
was once described by my friend Eddie Bannon, who used to be the artistic director at the Kilkenny Festival. And before that, he was a comedian. He once described me. He says, "One of the things I really like about you, Ed, is you're very at peace with your bitterness," which I think is a fair description to say I'm not bitter.
So, do you think you're less bitter than you used to be, perhaps?
I don't know. There's some days where I think I deserve to be more successful, and there's other days where I think I'm just getting away with it. So I think it's just.
Are you happy with where you are?
No one ever is.
Okay.
No one ever is.
Okay.
You know, I think I'd be happy. You know, there's ideas in my head of where that I'd be happy being there, but I know people who are there and they're not happy there. You know.
That's fair.
So you know, I am. It's an interesting business because it seems like it's exponential. You know, the difference in income and living standard and stuff like that at every stage. You know, the difference between being a circuit comic and a touring comic, and the difference between being an art centre touring comic and a theatre, 1,000-seater touring comic, and the difference between a theatre touring comic and an arena touring comic. Like, I mean, the trajectory from, basically NHS junior doctor salary to
like a private
fucking
surgeon.
Yeah, to like multimillionaire.
Right.
It's so. Where was I? Any particular things? So my bitterness. This is what we were talking about. Yeah, I try not to let it get in my way. There's some things I go, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Like there's a handful of, that I look back on. The last time I did Have I Got News for You, I completely admit that I just.
Have you been back since?
No.
I
was on it 4 times. It went well every time. I just spoke just enough to be heard, and everything I said was pretty funny, and it was grand. And then I went on it a 5th time, and I think I was just too relaxed. I think I was like, oh yeah, this is
like I know how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then I just talked way too much, and not enough of what I said was funny, to the point where like about halfway through I just stopped talking and just didn't do it.
What do you want?
What?
Like, what do you want?
That sounded very aggressive.
No, I mean like
nowhere. Because you asked me here.
No, I mean in the sense that like, because I was talking about this with a previous guest, where there's people that look at like someone like me who does, makes their living ish as just doing live comedy, and there's people that look at that being like, oh wow, that's so cool, like that's amazing. And there's people like me that look at what you're doing and I'm like, that's amazing, like I can't wait to get there one day. But is there anything that you goals, I guess, in terms of what do you want? What's your next goal?
I would say, because the simple fact is, if somebody literally turned around and said, I want to give you your own TV show, I wouldn't know what to do with that. Like I wouldn't know what to do with that.
Okay.
So it's not that. I don't want the Ed Byrne show. I remember
every day with you is like the Ed Byrne show.
I remember Bill Burr being interviewed on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, the Seinfeld thing. And Seinfeld asked him if he, he always appears on other people's things, does he not want his own show? And him coming out with the analogy of how I think his brother had said to him, you don't ever want to be the guy who owns the boat. You want to be friends with the guy who owns the boat. Because the guy who owns the boat's got hassles and marina fees, and he's scraping barnacles. You want to be the guy who shows up with a bucket of beers and gets on the boat. Because it's just easier.
Yeah.
I think that's, I'm kind of feel that way. I guess if I had sort of what would make me happy, I think would be all I wanted to do is be a stand-up comic, but I guess I would like to be able to do it so that I earned enough money in a year that I only had to tour every 3 years. Say.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean? So that the pressure of having to write the next show could just be off me for a bit longer.
So you don't have these like wants or desires. You don't fall asleep at night imagining grandiose fame. That's not.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I mean, I sit and I get drunk and watch the Oscars and go, why isn't it me?
Well, you probably should have been in a movie.
Yeah, that would help.
That would help.
You know, yeah, there is that.
Okay.
You know, every year when I practice my speech, the age gets older and older. You know, I was 54 when I wrote my first screenplay, and look at me now.
I keep hearing these stories like that.
I seem to remember that fantasy that was when it was 35.
When I was 18, I wrote in my journal that I would be famous by 23. I was like, 5 years is enough time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. That was a long time ago. And I'm still not even close to it. So so you're at the Soho this week.
Yeah.
So this episode will probably come out when you still have a few days left. But is the entire run sold out?
It is. And so there's
well, you can't come.
But there's another run booked in July.
Okay.
Another week there in July.
Is there anything else you want to plug?
Well, I'm on tour in general till the end of the year. You know? It's a good show. That's why we haven't really discussed it, because this is a show about failure.
It's a great show, actually. His show is actually really great. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on his payroll, but it is really good. Although I'm a little paranoid that maybe I'm done on the tour for now because I wore sweatpants and a turtleneck on stage and got bad reviewed. But it is a great show, and definitely check it out. I can't speak highly enough about it, and I'm not just saying that.
Well, thank you.
If I didn't like it, I probably wouldn't have came back to do more dates with you, to be honest. If you woke up tomorrow and you had a million notifications going wild and everyone was like, what did you do? Why does everyone hate Ed Byrne right now? Is there a specific thing that comes to mind that you think it might be?
I mean, I think we're all wondering about what stand-up routine we did a long time ago that's suddenly going to get unearthed, that suddenly is frowned upon these days.
Does anything come to mind?
There really isn't. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, I look back at a lot of my earlier stuff and I don't like it.
Okay. But that's good.
But that's, yeah.
That's normal.
I guess it is. Yeah, I mean, I do look back at it, you know, but I look back at a lot of stuff from the 90s that I thought was funny, and now I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know. I've been rewatching Seinfeld.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff that you couldn't do today.
It's not even just couldn't do, but just watching the stand-up in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And I'm going, this isn't good. And I remember liking it at the time. And I don't remember going, well, he's better than you. I don't deny that he's
I think you're overestimating the amount of viewers
incredible stand-up. But I look back at my own stuff from the 90s and I don't really like it so much, you know. So, yeah, but what will it be? What will it have turned out? It'll be somebody who's now well known, who I will have run into, who maybe used to work box office or press office or in a tech capacity at the Edinburgh Fringe or something like that, and who caught me on a bad day, or was the one person who was working that day when the stool wasn't put out for the fourth time in a row. Some of that. It'll be that. It'll be that person who will now be famous, and they'll go, yeah, I think one thing that really fuels me was how horrible this guy was to me when I was younger. And that'll be, yeah. Taylor Swift will come out of having worked at box office.
That's really funny.
That'll be what it is.
Thank you so much for coming on. Did you have a good time?
I had a lovely time. I could do this all day. I feel like I've not been funny enough. I've seen clips.
Say it. No,
I see all the clips you
funny.
posted on this, and I've gone, there's all nice little snappy funny bits, and I'm like,
well, why don't you come back in? Is it July you're doing the Soho again?
Yeah.
So why don't you come back and we'll do another episode?
I've got more failures we can talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I'll probably have more failures between now and July.
That would be amazing.
I'll have been in Australia for a couple of months. Who knows what will go wrong there?
I look forward to hearing it. I look forward to seeing what you've nitpicked about in terms of, you know, what your stool not getting put out is now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on. This is Everyone Hates Ed Byrne. Thank you.
Everyone hates you.